Hi, and welcome to the Glam Reaper podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Muldowney, aka the Glam Reaper herself. Today on the podcast, we are going to be talking to a super interesting guest, and I am going to leave it at that. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So, take it away. Hello, I'm Jennifer, aka the Glam Reaper, and this is a podcast about love, life, and loss. I wanted to share a story with you about the love of a dog. A few weeks ago, my best friend called me with heartbreaking news. Sadly, I've already been through this, and so have many of you that are listening today. But what I didn't know is what we're about to talk about today. And I would like to introduce my guest with the most fabulous name, Anna Champagne. I feel like we should have champagne while we're chatting. And let's talk about our darling pets and how we can come to say goodbye our way. I hope you will feel your heart swell just as I did when I heard about this incredible service. Anna, welcome. Your name, first of all, incredible. I'm sure I'm not the first person to have said it to you. My God,
Thank you
champagne.
so much. Yes, I can't take credit for it. It is married, so.
So tell me a little bit about you and the amazing company that you work with.
Oh, absolutely. So, Lap of Love is based in Tampa, Florida, and we do only house calls. So, we only come to homes to perform at home euthanasia service and end of life care. So, we will also do hospice appointments. So, for example, if your pet has been diagnosed with an illness that will ultimately end their life, or if your pet is just struggling with old age issues and you're having trouble getting to the doctor, then you are more than welcome to make an appointment with us and we'll come do an evaluation of the pet in your home and see what we can do to make them more comfortable and prepare you for the ultimate end, which is kind of sad to think about, but we
Yeah.
try our hardest to make it easy for you guys. But yeah, we are all over the United States now. We have well over 100 veterinarians now. It started with Dr. Danny McVitie and Dr. Mary Gardner over 10 years ago now. And ever since then, it has just grown. And we are not the only ones that provide this service. There's a lot of other veterinarians out there who have started at home primary euthanasia services. So the idea has absolutely blossomed, and people are very grateful, absolutely grateful. And I am too, to say that if we have the privilege of having an at home euthanasia, it is so much more comfortable for the
Oh,
family and for the pets. So I'm very, very blessed to be able to be part of this.
absolutely. It's I don't want to, I'm going to try and not get emotional on this interview because this is really speaks so close to home. We lost Roxy over 10 years ago now, and I will never ever forget going into the vets that day. And I'm starting to get emotional. Um but it's something that stayed with me forever. And when I heard about what you were able to provide to my friend, I just thought, wow, that is so needed. And what I find incredible about innovations like this, and America is just incredible for coming up with these things, but innovations like this that you don't realize. I mean, I work in the funeral community both with pets and humans, and so I get this the whole time, but you don't realize until you're going through it how badly something like this is needed. And when my friend told me, and only a week before had we been rolling around on her floor with her lovely dog, and we knew he was so ill. He'd been so ill for so long, and you do as a pet parent. I know myself, we really went through the emotional trauma of, are we doing the right thing? And euthanasia obviously brings a lot of skeletons out of the closets for a lot of people, and we won't get into the human side of it today, but it definitely, it's a heavy weight to bear to know that you did that, and did you do the right thing? And obviously our gorgeous little furry friends can't necessarily tell us back, but they can in a way, in their own little way. And so I just think it's absolutely incredible what you guys have done, and in such a short space of time, really. I mean, the fact that you're all across the United States is unbelievable. And you're saying other vets do it. I'd never heard of this until my friend introduced me to you guys, and I work in the pet memorialization business. So it just goes to show, and I'm sure there's plenty of listeners out there that will completely and utterly run to your website, and just to know that they have the information. If I could have, when my friend rang me and told me about it, before she came upon you guys, it's such a lovely gift to give somebody, because you guys are literally there holding people's hand as they're saying goodbye to their best friend that never judged them, that never, didn't matter what you did in the world, you'd come home to this lovely little ball of fluff. And oh my God, it's just, it really is incredible. What got you into the business yourself?
That's a good question. I absolutely did not see myself doing this when I graduated. I knew
Really?
since I was a little kid that I was going to be a veterinarian. I didn't know anything better. And when I graduated, it was kind of like, well, I'm a veterinarian now. Yeah. I
How
worked for
long?
about 2.5 years in private practice, and it was very hectic, and I learned so much from it. I absolutely do not regret that at all. But I felt like I wasn't at my place where I kind of needed to be. It didn't feel comfortable for me, and I started asking around about what other things I could try as a career. And I happened to live in Tampa,
Right.
so I had heard about Lap of Love before. I actually learned about them very briefly my fourth year of veterinary school. So I looked up the website, I found Dr. Danny's email, and I shipped off my CV and I was like, hey, I'm willing to give this a try. And she actually called me back. I was very surprised to hear from her, one of the CEOs. And that was really bizarre. I was like, why are you calling me? You're
Yeah, of course.
important.
Doing somebody's
But she
assistant to an
personally
assistant.
called me back, and sure, by about 3 months after that, we were able to start, and I transitioned over to Lap of Love, and I feel like this is where I belong. Actually,
Oh,
it's not. It's so bizarre to say. I feel very comfortable, like being with people when they're sad. It's a very weird thing to say, and it's. I mean, I
speaking to
guess
the
we all have our
conversion.
place.
Yeah.
um, but when I
Mhm.
was in general practice, I got a lot of compliments for how I was handling those appointments, and people started asking for me specifically when their pets started getting sick. And so I said, "Well, I think I'm being called this way, and I've been there ever since, and I really think this is the place where I'm going to stay for quite a while." And I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful I found where I belong in veterinary medicine. And as I said, you don't realize at all when you graduate where your career is going to take you. And here I am doing something extremely unique. And again, very grateful that I'm here.
It's you actually raise a completely off topic, but a very valid point. Because a lot of people often ask me, "How in God's name did you get, or why did you choose this, or what?" And I personally feel like it chose me, and I don't really like the generic terms of, "Oh, it's my calling," and that sort of stuff. But I do feel like when you find your niche or your niche, as you guys say, when you
Yeah.
find that, you absolutely know, you feel it in every fiber of your being. Like, when you said there about, is it weird that I'm happiest when I'm kind of with sad people or come, no, like my heart, I joke, but I don't joke about how my heart feels like it swells after I've helped complete a memorial and done that person who has died and their whole family's justice. Like, I literally feel like my heart swells with love and just affection for what I do, and just people, whether it's loss of a pet or loss of a human or loss of a job or loss of a partner through divorce, like, they're going through what at the time they're considering the worst time in their entire lives. And so many of us don't see the wood for the trees. We don't see a way out. We don't, it just feels like you're being swallowed up. And to have somebody throw you a lifeline or just even reach out a hand to you to kind of keep you marginally above water, for even a short space of time, I just think is a wonderful thing. And I think I completely agree with you. And I remember back in college, I mean, I did a 4-year degree back home in Dublin, Ireland, in business. And when I set up my business then 10 years ago, and so college is about, oh God, is it 20 years ago now? It can't be. How did that happen? But when I set up my business many years later, I had to go and do like a general course in business. I had a 4-year degree in business. I still had to go back to do a course. So I think college is incredible. I don't discount it. I don't think people should not do it. I think it's an incredible growth experience. And yes, education's amazing, but a lot of what they teach is not practical. And so I do feel like you do have to go out and kind of figure your do I'm a fan of doing work experience and being an intern at a couple of different things that maybe you think might float your boat. I went back to college and I did a PR diploma, did an events diploma, and it's still a far cry from what I'm doing right now, but it's valid. And so, yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of veterinarians out there who come out of college and they're like, okay, now what? And there's so many options in veterinarian as well. I mean, you've the large animals, the small ones. And actually, that brings me to a question. Is it just for dogs that you do, or is it for dogs and cats? Is it for any animal, any size?
Lap of Love advertises primarily cats and dogs, but we do have veterinarians who start with Lap of Love for willing to see other species. And I myself actually have a lot of exotic experience,
Oh,
so
God,
I
do
help.
tell.
Yeah, I help with the guinea pigs, ferrets, lizards. Somebody called and asked me to do their pet chicken once. A
Oh,
fish that was unique.
please
Uh,
don't tell me you've had to do a tarantula.
Not yet.
I
Not
mean,
yet.
oh God, I couldn't
Yeah,
cope with
no,
that. I
not
don't think
yet.
I'd have any empathy or sympathy there. I'd just be like, you
We
crazy.
get, I think the most common exotic, I guess, quote unquote exotic, more farm animal would be a potbelly pig.
Right, okay.
It is very fascinating how much people love their pigs, and they are so sweet too. They are the absolute sweetest creatures, but they take up a lot of space.
They do, they do. They are big. And animals, honestly, animals in the US. I've often on social media kind of had fun, if you like, with the size of I know we're talking about pets and things, but meat. I mean, I unfortunately am a meat eater. I'm not going to claim that I'm anything other. Um, but I mean, the size of chicken breasts. I'm like, do the chickens get plastic surgery or what's happening? I don't
That's a very American thing. I actually studied at the
understand.
College of Agriculture at Kansas State University, so I know all about that.
Well, I mean, that's a whole other podcast because I'm fascinated with how a chicken back home in Ireland, a chicken fillet, is the size of the inside part of my hand, the palm, and a chicken, is a double D or a triple. Like, I mean, the Kardashians would have their. Oh my God, it's just crazy. But we're digressing. Um, and so you do quite a lot of different animals. That's interesting because I kind of figured it might just be cats and dogs. They're obviously the most typical household animal, but people have different tastes. I mean, the tarantula thing, I can't get behind. I can't support that as an arachnophobe. I cannot support that.
No, I
But,
always recommend that
each their
they
own.
call first if they have something other than a cat or a dog and find out if there's a veterinarian in the area willing to do that. Because, again, we're all a little bit unique, which
Mhm.
is why we just primarily advertise cats and dogs.
Right.
But yeah, just in case, give us a call. There's no worries.
Just check in if you want your dragon at home. Just check in, just in case. Now, quick question. So you're all over the states, and you're under the Lap of Love umbrella as such. Um, do you? So does each person in each state, are they busy enough that that's all that they do? Is there certain states that are maybe busier? In maybe one state where it's not as busy, do they double up as a regular veterinarian and then do the at-home service?
Oh, that's a really good question. It's amazing how quickly Lap of Love grows every time they open a new location. And
Wow.
it's really up to the veterinarians how they want to do their schedule. We try to be very flexible. As you can imagine, being a company started by two women, we're very cognizant of family life.
Yeah.
So um, basically, for me personally, I started full time. I continue as full time, and I do this as my full time job. Other veterinarians may want to do this just as part time. I
Right.
know some do this as basically their retirement veterinary job, and they work
Okay.
just a little bit. And so there's all sorts of varieties. But every time we open a new location, absolutely, it's a little bit slow at first, but it is quite incredible how quickly it gets busy. A good example would be when you start, we might see maybe one or two patients a day, if that. If you start a new location, it tends to be pretty slow, and your free time you're going to the clinics and talking to them, letting them know you're in the area. And most veterinary clinics are so happy that we are there for them. And surprisingly enough, within a few months, you might start seeing up to 4 or 5 appointments a day. It goes
Wow.
really quick. And
Word spreads.
yes, word spreads
Mm.
very quickly. And in Tampa, since we've been around in Tampa the longest, we are very busy here. I easily see 4 or 5 patients a day. So,
That's incredible. And I mean, it's incredible. And I actually want to come back to because I guess I'm focused, probably just from my own experience, on the euthanasia part of it. But you described the end of life and the sort of hospice care. So they're not all these appointments that you're talking about. They're not all tragic appointments. It's not all euthanasia in home. So describe to me a little bit more about the hospice and the end of life because I'm honestly it's terrible. I'm such a visual person, but I'm just imagining all these little graying old puppies, like with the little graying tashes on these
oh,
little
absolutely.
yeah,
I think,
like
yeah,
hobbling
I
around.
think geriatric animals are the cutest
Oh,
things
they're
ever.
great.
I think they just tug at my heart. That's probably one of the
Oh,
reasons I love what I do is old pets. I just think they're so sweet. At the moment, because of coronavirus, we are not advertising hospice because we try to stay in the homes as short as possible.
right.
We're trying to keep distance and everything like that. But when we do offer, oh, and we also are offering telehealth right now. So we offer telemedicine advice.
Oh,
So
that's
if you're kind of
wonderful.
in that position where you're like, I'm kind of not sure what I should do, you can schedule a telehealth
Wonderful.
advice and they'll talk to you about what you could potentially do with your pet via video chat. But
Mhm.
when we're not in a pandemic,
Yeah, I know.
when
Welcome
we're
to
not in a
2020.
pandemic, we have about an hour to sit. We'll do a physical exam on your pet and we'll kind of eyeball around the house too, because you'll be surprised how much you can do around your house to help your pet's comfort. We'll talk about your pet's specific condition. If there is a particular diagnosis, we do appreciate you having some records. If you do, a lot of the times we don't.
Hmm.
Um, and we go from there. Every appointment is very unique. We will go over food, we will go over medications, and the question, how do we medicate? Some pets don't even want to be medicated.
Yeah.
Uh, so when
My
we
dog at home in
leave,
Ireland picks out her any pill, no matter what you give it to her in, will eat
that's
around everything and leave the pill. I don't know how she does it. A marshmallow, like that's
yeah.
impossible. I couldn't even do that.
So when we leave, you are going to have to do the care at home when we leave, but we're available. Email is the best way to get a hold of us, and we'll give you our information, everything if you have further questions, and we check in on each other and everything like that. But one of the biggest things that I think I leave with people is not just, okay, this is what we're going to do to focus on the comfort and health of your pet, but when exactly do I say it's time to call you for euthanasia? That's the biggest question
Mm,
we get is when is it time? And so when we're there doing a hospice, we can actually sit down and talk about your pet's specific condition or situation. And although I'm not psychic, if I were
yeah,
psychic,
of course.
I'd be making lots of money. But I
Yeah.
can at least go over some specific situations that could happen, and I can give you an idea of what it looks like when a pet starts to decline. And when is that window of time to go ahead and say, okay, we need to schedule that euthanasia? Because that window of time is very gray for a lot of people. It's very rare that it comes like, oh my gosh, now's the time. Absolutely, right now. I know.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
usually, if that happens, it's emergent. You have to rush them to an ER, and that's scary. But sometimes it's really slow and it's hard to recognize those changes. And so that's why we're there to let you know, okay, when you see these symptoms, more than 4 or 5 times a week, we need to think about scheduling that appointment because we don't want it to get this bad. We
Yeah.
describe what a really bad situation is. we'll counsel you through that. We do our best to deal with every situation uniquely. You have to remember that death is like birth. You can have a birth plan, but Lord will decide what
Yeah.
happens that day. And it's the same with death. We do our best to prepare ourselves, but again, it's really up to the pet to decide when it's going to happen. It's always up to them. But we're
Yeah.
always here. We answer the phones 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Time every day. We have wonderful people on the phone to answer and talk to you if you feel like you really need to speak with somebody. So we're here.
Yeah, I mean, it really is a truly incredible service. I just wish, I mean, you're not in Ireland, I don't think, anyway, so that's
Nope,
unfortunate.
not outside the U.S. yet. Big
Soon,
goal, though.
soon.
Big goal.
Yeah, soon. Because I just, yeah, it definitely would have it would have just taken, as I said, I remember it. I remember every detail about it. Roxy'd had multiple strokes. I'd actually just flown in from Cuba that morning, and I remember looking at my mum's face, and I knew there was something wrong straight away. And I remember we bundled her up into a car and took her to the vet. But I remember leaving my father and my brother behind, both crying their eyes out, and both very masculine men, would not be shedding a tear very often at all. And they were both, crying their eyes out. And, me and my mum took her, and it just would have been much nicer and much more comfortable, and I guess just not as horrific. If you guys could have come to us as opposed to us go and put her on lie her on a metal tray. And I mean, yeah. But so I just think it's incredible. And lapoflove.com is the website, right? Just in case anybody
Correct.
wants.
Yeah, lapoflove.com. And we also have pet loss support as well. Clicking through that website, you'll find that we have a support line, and we also list other support lines if you're struggling with grief. So even if you didn't use our services, we try to put as much information on that website for you so that you can find help if you need it. So it's all
Wonderful.
there. It's a big website. I think we're in the middle of actually trying to make it a little bit more user friendly
Right. Okay.
because
Well, you
there's so much information that
yeah,
came
when you have a lot of information, it's hard. And as somebody who does her own websites, it's a minefield as well, because you're trying to put yourself in the user's position, but you're also trying to make everything look cohesive and make sense. So it is difficult. I mean, the whole internet and online is a crazy thing. Now, what I also love about this business is that it was started by two women. So can you tell me a little bit about them? Did they have pets themselves? What made them? Was it something missing that they saw an opportunity, or how did that begin?
the idea originally started with Dr. Danny McVitie, and she was doing emergency medicine. She had just graduated, and a little dog came in, and the lady said, "Can he stay in my lap while
Oh,
we euthanize?" And she said, "Absolutely, absolutely, we'll do that." And it kind of just triggered her. The name Lap of Love came from that situation, and
oh, that
they
makes
started
sense.
getting phone calls of people who needed somebody to come to them, either because they physically could not move the pet. That's a common call. um,
Mm-hmm.
like, it's too big, we can't
Yeah.
move him. Or the cat is scared, the cat's not coming out from under the bed, but you don't want to touch them because they're in pain. It's a scary
Mm-hmm.
situation. Or the client themselves, the family, for one reason or another, cannot leave their home. So she started taken those calls and realized I could do this. And she went to school with Dr. Mary. Dr. Mary, she's totally cool. She basically, she's a software engineer. She's awesome. She does programming. She did that before she became a vet. So they tag team up, and I swear, Dr. Danny is a wonderful businesswoman. She just is. She's very talented with it. And then Dr. Mary took on programs. She helped with the website. We have electronic medical record that she did, and then we revamped it a couple years ago. So she's just constantly doing all of the computer stuff, and that's how our database works because of her. So they really made such a wonderful team. Dr. McVitie herself is a mom,
Oh,
and so she was doing vet school as a mom. She started out as a veterinarian as a mom. She started a brand new business as a mom. And so she obviously understands how a lot of us veterinarians who are like 80% women now, right? There's a lot of women.
Right.
Yeah,
Wow.
a lot of women in veterinary medicine now. We're taking over, guys. Um, so
Cue Beyonce, "Who Ruled the World" song.
so you're gonna watch our generation really change veterinary medicine, and it already has. We are changing how we deal with employees. We're much more understanding about being parents, about taking care of elderly at home, because a lot of women in the United States end up taking care of elderly family members at home.
Mhm.
Um, so you're really watching veterinary medicine change because women are taking over. And so Dr. Mary and Dr. Danny really tag team well. And then they got, of course, a whole crew of wonderful people together who've been with them a long time. And then lots of veterinarians behind them after that.
Yeah.
So that's how
And
it
it
grew.
definitely is I think in any company, it's who you surround yourself with and who's on the team. It's the people that make any company. I don't care what anybody says. You can have the Apple and the technology is amazing, but really at the core, it's the people behind it, and that's what drives any company to be a success, I believe. Just I mean, question you and this, you already said that you're not a fortune teller, but how do you see the industry, the pet grief industry, that side of what you do? How do you see it going in the future? Do you think people are going to start embracing more funerals and memorials for their pets, or is that going to become more of a thing? Or, have you got any thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. I think this actually goes along with more women taking over the pet veterinary medicine industry and our culture moving towards more and more people having pets at home. And
Especially thanks to
uh,
COVID.
right, thanks to
I
COVID.
wanted a dog in New York City to be fostered during COVID-19. I'm telling you now because I tried.
Oh, it's been wonderful
Incredible.
watching shelters actually become empty. It's a
Oh,
good thing. It's a good thing.
absolutely.
But
Talk about heart swelling.
people are choosing to have less children and therefore more pets. And so, yes, we are absolutely shifting over to pets being more family members, and people are spending more money on their pets. Not just food and toys, but also they're willing to spend more money for veterinary care, meaning more people are wanting to ask the question, well, what about chemotherapy in pets? Well, what
Yeah.
about a hip replacement in my dog? People are willing to ask those questions, and some are willing to actually financially move in that direction. So we're seeing more of that. And so, absolutely, at least with Lap of Love, we are seeing an increase overall of use of our services, and tons of positive reviews. And for general practice as well, veterinarians who are doing regular appointments and everything, they are also thanking us because they themselves have clients wanting us to do this at home more and more often. And when
Yeah.
it comes to aftercare, so funeral services, burials, ashes, that sort of thing, there is absolutely an uptick in that as well. I work with a wonderful crematory, Honor Thy Pet, in Tampa, one of the oldest pet cremation services here in the area. They're like three generations of family who own it, and they are like at capacity. They had to somehow buy a new cremation machine, like, and that's hard. That's
Hmm.
whew, that's expensive, and
Yeah.
takes
Hmm.
permits and space, and so they are absolutely like at capacity right now, and they also help with burials. And so, yeah, I'm seeing more, my friends are seeing more, the cremation industry is seeing more, and I see that just to continue to grow as long as we continue bringing animals into the home. So
Yeah.
there's
I
no end in sight.
completely agree. Yeah. No, I completely agree. I've one of the things that irritated me over the last couple of years is and I spoke about it on my TED talk, is the judgment of grief. I mean, just what you touched on there about people asking about chemotherapy for their dogs. I thankfully have not ever been in that position to even consider that. But I know myself, if I was sitting in front of a vet who maybe didn't broach the subject with me and I had heard of it from you, say, I know I would probably say, okay, is this a stupid question? But is there such a thing as chemotherapy for dogs? I know I would. And I would feel like, is that an appropriate thing to ask? I don't know. But I know my dogs are my life. And so it's, it's interesting, that whole idea of how we still feel judgment, that the having a dog is not the same as having a child. And I'm not going to go into those comparisons now, because I know that there's people who have very strong ideas on both. But and I'm sure you have been on the phone or in person holding somebody's hand for hours while they've cried about their dog, and that, they might have gone through a divorce, and this was literally their last pal, their last friend in the world. And it's devastating. It's absolutely devastating. And my one thing, and especially with this blog, and I will always in life, is ask any listeners and anybody to just not judge anybody. It doesn't matter whether you're grieving the loss of a job, the loss of a partner, the loss of a human being, the loss of a pet. Your loss is your loss, and you're allowed to have it. And it shouldn't warrant judgment from anybody. I mean, we're such a judgmental world anyway. It's very difficult to get away from that. But when it comes to grief, I'm just like, give it a break. Like, give us a break. When it comes to that, just stop. Um, One, I'm going to ask you this, and I don't know how you're going to feel about it, but I'd like you, if you could, share with me one good and one potentially horror story that you've had in your career, if there is any.
Oh my goodness, we would have to pour some alcoholic beverages and sit for a
Well,
while.
this podcast is open to all.
We got some time.
It is run by an Irish girl, so.
I think I'll start with one that, like, everything just. Oh my gosh, I was so embarrassed. I'll start with the bad, because that way
Okay.
let's end on a good note.
Yeah, that's it. Let's
So
end on a good note.
it was when I first started with Lap of Love. It was within the first month or so. And I was just a flustered disaster for some reason. I was. And I show up very late to this apartment complex, and apartment complexes are so difficult.
Mm,
This is like a 20-story apartment complex. So you have to find a way in. You have to go up and it's communal. So, I mean, there's people in the elevator. And before coronavirus, we weren't socially distancing. I'm
yeah.
so grateful for that on many levels.
Yes, absolutely.
So, people are like curious about what you're doing there. They see that you have a doctor bag. They see that you have a stethoscope. They see your name tag, and it's just like, oh my goodness, leave us alone. Okay.
Yeah.
And this particular situation, I was very grateful. This person was not alone. He was really suffering, and he was really struggling with his decision. This was a larger dog who was slowly losing the ability to walk in his hind end. He was older, and he was incontinent as well, and he was painful back there. And he was on medication and everything, but the pain was breaking through that pain medication.
Mm.
And of course, because we don't deserve dogs, this dog, his tail
Mm.
was still wagging. He was still
Oh,
eating. But, every time the owner wasn't there, he just, oh man, he really struggled. So he was putting on quite a performance for his owner. And I'm here to say that happened to me too. Absolutely. No one's alone in this. And he was an absolute mess. And thankfully he had a friend there. And his friend said, oh man, I just want to apologize for his grieving. This has been his life. He actually like lost a lot of friends these past few years, and this was his only dog. And I was like, oh my gosh, I understand. It's perfectly fine. We'll go slow. We'll take it easy. But he was struggling so much. We had to call his mother and have his mother on the phone for him to get through this. And he was a very physical griever. So a lot of crying. And I certainly walked away with tears and snot on me, but I'm used to it.
yeah.
You
Well,
get
believe
used
it.
to
I'm
that sort of
tearing
thing.
up as you're telling me the story.
Um,
Whew.
but yeah, the euthanasia itself went very smoothly, and then I stepped away to give them some time to grieve, like I always do. Went back down to the car. Oh my goodness, I just locked my keys in my car. No, I
Oh,
did not, and it was back when I had my oh gosh, I had a 2005 Toyota Matrix. It was a wonderful old car, but it still had the manual ignition. So, and of course, I'm pretty sure my cell phone was in there. That was great.
oh God.
Oh my gosh. And it's dark out in this parking lot. And I just let off a string of profanity because nobody else was around, so I thought. And of course, this man walks up. He's like, ma'am, are you okay? And I was like, oh, hi. And I said, I am so
Great.
sorry. I apologized up and down for my behavior. I was just upset. I told him what had happened and what I was doing there. And he said, I kind of understand what you're going through. I'm a physician at the hospital over here. And I was like, oh, thank God. I was so embarrassed. This guy actually called somebody, a locksmith, for me. I was so astounded by that. He was so sweet. He called a
Wow.
locksmith for me. He got somebody over there. Of course, at this point, I run myself back upstairs and let the friend know, hey, I apologize. It's going to be like 20 minutes before I have my stretcher back up here, because I'm all by myself. I go to these appointments all by myself,
Yourself, of
and
course.
it's dark in the middle of Tampa, and oh, it felt like it lasted forever. It felt like everything just went on and on and on. And it really, in the end, it really didn't. It was still about an hour. And the owner got plenty of time with his pet and was very grateful. Um, but oh my gosh, I was sweating. I was
Yeah.
embarrassed. Oh my gosh, I was so nervous. That was probably that. I don't think anything can possibly get worse than that. Uh,
I'm actually laughing as I'm listening to this, Anna, because do you know what? That's me on a regular basis. The kinds of things that happen to
Oh
me,
gosh,
I
it's just
swear
so
to God.
embarrassing because they're upset,
Oh,
and I just, oh, whew, man, I'm
yeah,
shaking thinking about it again. I'm just so sad. Oh my gosh, worst case situations, or the best one, best possible one. Oh gosh, I don't even know. And it's so hard to say best in these situations. I would have
yeah,
to
of
say,
course.
I'll say my favorite thing. People say a lot of things when they're grieving.
Yeah,
And it can be quite surprising what they say. It can be comical. One of my
yeah.
favorite ones that I ever heard was a guy who was sitting there holding his dog, crying, and he said, "This was the worst dog I ever had." And he was weeping over this dog, and his wife sitting there like, "I know, honey, he was terrible." And he's like, "I don't know why I'm crying." I was
Oh,
like, "That's because dogs are the best. Even when they're the worst possible
even
thing in our lives, this is what happens. We end up just weeping over them." So,
yeah, yeah. Well, what is it? Isn't there that famous Marilyn Monroe quote? If you can't handle me at my worst, then you don't deserve me at my best. But that's dogs.
exactly.
We handle them at their worst, and their best. I mean, their best is just beyond comprehension. They truly are. They're just your best friend. I mean, it really is incredible. To me, a house is not a home without a dog in it.
Oh, absolutely. It feels very weird without, like, I've had animals in my life always. I think, like, in school when I went to college, and I was in the dorms. And of course you're not allowed to have a pet in the dorm, and I didn't feel right. I didn't feel right at all. I mean, I got a plant, that was nothing. I ended up sneaking
Mm.
a turtle into the into the door because I needed something.
Very good. Yeah, I'm in New York 6 years now, and I haven't had a dog because I travel too much. I live on my own and I travel too much, so I can't. Even though for the last year I have tried, I'm like, no, I'm going to, and it's, the right one is going to come along and it's just going to make sense, and it doesn't matter. I'm just going to change my travels and I'm going to change my life and everything, and I've just got to have one and I've got to make it work because it's just coming home to an empty house. It's just not right. So I think that's probably why I go home to my own dog back in Ireland that lives with my parents. I go home to her, or pre-COVID, I did 3 or 4 times a year, and it's so funny. I FaceTime my parents and I'm like, yeah, can you just move? Hiya, puppy. Hiya, video. Like, I say if people could hear me, because my mum tells me that apparently, the FaceTime has a certain ringtone.
Right.
When that phone rings, mum says Poppy comes running in because she knows it's me
Nice.
on the phone because I'm the only one that FaceTimes my mum. So I'm like, my baby. Oh, they are. They really are the best. But I'm very excited because I'm potentially going to Florida. I've only been to Florida once in my life, and I did the Miami Marathon 15 years ago, and I'm
Oh my
never doing it again. Yes.
gosh.
So I need to go back to Florida and like attempt to see the rest of it. Tampa, I don't know if Tampa's potentially on our list, but we'll see. But I'm really intrigued now because I want to come by the head offices and maybe check it out and see what the crack is. Now, tell me this though, because my only previous knowledge of Tampa is Magic Mike going to be working in the offices.
I'm not sure.
I'm definitely calling in there.
We'll have to do a check on that. We'll check the schedule.
Yeah, to make sure that he's the receptionist that day. Oh, it's terrible how we get all our information from the movies. But anyway,
Well,
that's how,
definitely find time to see manatees while you're here. I tell everybody if you're coming to Florida, see manatees. This is the only place you're going to find them, and you will
oh,
just grin ear to ear. Like there, you cannot
oh,
look at a manatee without smiling, and it will make
oh,
your day.
wow. Okay, definitely. I'm gonna have to. Well, you can send me a list because if I'm coming, I want the local list from top to toe. I'm a big fan of ticking off places and going to see them, but as much as possible, will try and get locals to give me the directions because it's like back home in Ireland when people say they're coming to visit and I'm from Dublin, they say, "Oh, at Temple Bar." I'm like, "No, don't go near Temple Bar. Are you crazy? That's where all the tourists go." And they're like, "But that's what I am." I'm like, "Exactly. Don't go there. You'll pay €10 for a pint of Guinness and it won't be great." So it's always the locals is always the way to go, I think. But Anna, thank you so much. This was such a good interview. I mean, I could talk to you all day and probably ask some more. So if you're open to it, I want to do another short one, maybe a follow up once I release this. As I often say to people when I'm signing off from them, I'm like, I hope I never see you again because, if I see you again, it's never good news. So
Right.
I now get to say it to you, which is unusual for me. But yeah, thank you so much for taking the time with me today.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for thinking of me.
No worries. And is there anything else? Do you want to add anything before we say goodbye or whatever? Do you need to know?
Our
I think
website, yeah, our website is the best resource. It has everything. When I was in general practice, I would use the Lap of Love website for my clients. And so many clinics do so as well. And so if you're curious, click through it.
perfect. All right, super. Thank you so much, my lovely. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Bye.
I hope you really enjoyed that. Some definitely interesting takeaways for sure. Just think what Lap of Love is providing is an incredible service. And if you haven't seen it yet, check out my TEDx talk. Search Jennifer Muldowney, and grief is as unique as your heartbeat. It's also on my website, theglamreaper.com. But let us know, what are your thoughts? Email us at theglamreaperpodcast@gmail.com. That's theglamreaperpodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, my lovelies, talk to you soon.